Season 5, there we go. So, like always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am back and I am bringing new things to the podcast. But let's start with the beginning because the literal beginning of the podcast, as the title already said this, I decided that I want to look back and listen to my first ever episode ever and comment on it, see if anything changed since then or not. Not only that, but I have already listened to a little bit of the teaser and I'm going to add that at the end of the episode. So stay around for that because I already have a reaction, shocking reaction to the teaser. And I'm mentioning this because the teaser in the first episode, or like the first few episodes, are the ones that got the most downloads. From from all of the over 100 episodes that I have. So, with no further ado, let's get into first ever episode and let's see what I have to say about it. Hello, and welcome back to Traveling Inside Out, a podcast about experiencing life with anxiety while traveling. My name is Alina, and I'm going to be your host. Okay, I already have so many questions. First and foremost, I am going to be your host. I'm not yet. I am going to. And also, the first episode ever, I'm saying welcome back. So, is welcome back my catchphrase? I can't believe that I said welcome back just because I had a teaser. It's the first episode. Like, what is going on? Anyway, I can hear that I am scared shitless. Let's continue. First, a little background story. I am a Romanian who moved to Iceland 3 years ago, and my last adventure was backpacking through South America for almost 8 months. And as I teased last time, this week I'm going to discuss what it means to adjust to a steady life and the cultural shock of being back home. The interesting bit is that I remember. So I was recording with my headphones. I only had the phone and the headphones, and I was recording directly into the Anchor app. And because I kept being very nervous, I would just have sentences and then stop. I remember that back then I would write down like sentences, full sentences. Throughout time, I wrote ideas, and then a lot of my episodes are just me talking basically with nothing actually fully prepared, just having the idea in my head. However, I have to say that because of this, I love the fact that there are full sentences with a stop that a person can actually have time to understand what I'm saying. That's one of the changes that I'm already noticing. Another thing that I need to mention is the subject. It's interesting because back then it was the end of August 2018, and I already quit my job, I think, or I was about to quit my job. And I had no plan other than I need a fucking break. I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. I need to leave. And it's interesting that this was the first subject that I chose because I was very deep inside of coming back from a long travel and then not actually being able to readapt to my life. For all those out there who aspire to be a traveler, I can say one thing. It's not as easy as some of people want you to believe it is. Um, I still remember in my sixth month of traveling, I was getting really tired. I was traveling solo at that time and not staying more than 1 week in one place. It was starting to get to me. However, when I bought my plane ticket back home, I had a little panic attack because it was the first time when I had a deadline, when my travels had an end. And even though I was tired, I was still not ready to go back.
You know what? This is such a serious thing, what I'm saying. And I'm over here being like, yeah, that's literally what happened to me. And I'm like, wait, that's me. That's me talking. I'm like, I can relate to that. Obviously, it's me talking from the past. Hello, that's the whole point of this episode. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this is something that I encounter a lot of times in my life when I don't want that to end, but I also can't go on. So I a lot of times it happened to me that I was in this limbo in which I didn't want it for something to end, but I can't go on as it is anyway. So if I look back, it's one thing that I would do differently, but I'm not going to say it because maybe I already said this in the episode. Again, this was in August of 2018, and I went back to Iceland beginning of June of 2018. So let's see.
Fast forwarding 2 months later, when I actually landed back in Iceland, I still remember the feeling that I had while being in the airport. When I saw, of course, the airport that I recognized very well, one of the first thoughts that I had was, I don't want to be here. I just want to keep on going, even though, again, I was tired of not sleeping in my own bed.
This is actually a very good point, and I'm curious to hear from Traveling Inside Out listeners. So please chime in, send me a voice message. You're gonna find out how at the end of the episode. So I'm actually very curious. Does this ever happen to you that when you feel like you feel a certain way when you get back home or to your final destination? Um, in such a way that you can tell how okay you are with your life or not. And why I'm saying this is because in total I have moved back and forth between Iceland and any other nation basically 4 times. So 4 times I left thinking that I'm not going to return to Iceland. 3 times I left with thinking that I'm not going to return to Iceland. And so, starting with 2018, every single time when I came back to Iceland, except 2020 when I came, I mean, not even then, I wasn't sure. I had this feeling of not wanting to be here, not wanting to be in Iceland. So I'm curious to hear from our listeners, from Traveling Inside Out listeners, if any of you, do you encounter this? Do you realize how you're feeling about where you are living when you land in the airport? Because it happened to me like every single time I knew how I feel about the country, because I did have moments when I felt okay, but when I started feeling really bad about landing in Iceland and that being my final destination, I realized, nope, it's time to move on.
So I had to adjust not only to staying put for a while, but also to my home being a different home.
I don't know how many minutes we are in, but I'm already annoyed. I'm so calm and so like talking slowly and kind of quietly. I was really nervous.
And what I'm trying to say here is that for all those travelers out there who have stopped traveling for different reasons, don't feel guilty if you're feeling stuck.
It's not even the first time I think that I'm saying what I'm trying to say. Don't say that. Just go ahead and say what you have to say. And if it's to say to people not to be scared if they are tired, or to admit or not be ashamed, cool, awesome. Moving on.
So don't just waste your free time. Try to get back into a routine that involves your hobbies. Of course, one of my most important hobbies is hiking. Unfortunately, and as many people laughed at me, in my first week back in Iceland, I managed to sprain my ankle just on my way to work. Even though in 8 months of traveling in South America, nothing happened to me. So, because of that, I was not able to hike for quite a little bit of time.
Well, I'll be damned. Good old times when Alina went on a insane solo backpacking trip in which she hitchhiked a lot and climbed the volcano and did all the crazy stuff. Like she went rock climbing and canopying and all sort of insane stuff, and nothing other than just a few scratches and bruises in some places. And then the first week back in Iceland, she's twisting an ankle. I remember that. That was not good at all. That was horrible. Not gonna lie. Quite a bit of a pain. I mean, it's not a bad advice to find your hobbies and practice them, basically. But let's see, what am I saying next?
Well, funny story is that I didn't manage to stay put for too long. So, in a bit more than 1 month after I arrived back, I had to book a plane ticket and go again somewhere, which I find that can help as well.
Well, it is said that you can't fight fire with fire. Everybody says it, and even Adele in her last album. But maybe you can fight the desire of traveling with traveling some more. Or you can fight the readjusting thing with not being where you are supposed to adjust to. How is that gonna work? Well, it didn't because, as I said, I left. When you are hangover, in order to move to go over hangover, you're just gonna have a shot of something. It might do the trick, but long term is not gonna help you.
City made me feel even more confused because everything felt old and new in the same time. Old because I had so many memories in the city, and new because of all the changes that normally happen in a capital city, alongside with people moving on or moving out of Iceland.
Yeah, this is something that nobody talks about, or people don't talk about it so much, is the fact that you go out and explore the world and go about your challenges and life and so on. But then when you come back, you are a different person. It's unlikely that after 8 months travel, you are literally the same. So you are a different person, but then you come into a city where it's great to meet friends and so on, but everything seems old and new. I really like the fact that I mentioned this. I'm actually happy I mentioned that because I'm understanding it even better now. Um, After you've been through such an insane trip that I've been on, you need time to digest what's happening. And you can't quite do it when you are not home. You are just in another country where you used to live before you left. So Iceland didn't feel like home anymore. It was almost home back before starting the South American trip, but then it wasn't feeling like home anymore. And while trying to process my stuff, I was also kind of trying to readjust to all this new reality. And the fact that people left, that's very normal in Iceland for people to just come for a semester or something like that, and then to either move on or go on their trips or go back to their homelands.
One of the moments when I really realized the cultural shock of being back home is real was when I was an exchange student in Turkey. So I was there just for 1 semester. And when I came back home, it was weird to see the changes in my city, the one that I was talking about earlier. Um, but in the same time, I felt even, I would say, a little bit betrayed because people moved on. Nobody stopped in one place, they kept living their life without me, which I know it might sound very weird, but the feeling that they had a lot of an amazing moments without me being included in them, it felt a bit upsetting to say.
What I didn't say then, and I'm recognizing it now, I wasn't upset that people moved on without me. What I was missing was the fact that they all went through the same experience together while I was alone. So they all went through all this stuff together, and I was the one excluded, and nobody was on my side. Nobody was. There was nobody that I could share the experience with. Now, granted, in Turkey, I actually went with someone from the same university as me. And so it's not like I was alone, but there was none of those friends that I had back then were actually in the same boat with me, and that made me feel very lonely. And it happened every single time in all of my times of living outside of my country. It happened in 4 different countries.
As I was mentioning, as an exchange student, would have been so easier if I would have just joined the team that was in charge of the incoming students from outside of the country. I'm just giving an example now, but there are so many more
Yeah,
examples.
exactly my point. The fact that there are some ways to combat that, and one of the things which I haven't done was to actually do that, to get involved in the people who are coming in your country, so that you are still kind of satisfying that desire, or at least you can connect with people who are going through similar experience with yours.
I really wanted to mention the cultural shock of being back home because not so many people talk about it. You hear everyone and everywhere about the cultural shock of living in another society or in another culture, meeting new people, and so on, which is indeed a very challenging experience, but it's something that you are kind of expecting. However, or at least in my case, I never expected to have the cultural shock while being back home.
I mean, I've been talking about the reverse cultural shock so much on this podcast and in real life that it's so interesting to see that I'm actually fully mentioning it in my first episode. I guess this is how everything started.
I remember after living 8 months in Iceland and then going back home, the first 2 days, I didn't even want to meet any of my friends. I felt like I was not ready. So I was just walking around the city and trying to understand the changes and trying to reintegrate the images of my city back into my life.
I can actually give you more insight into that. It was so I moved to Iceland in 2015 in last day of July, and then I moved out of Iceland somewhere mid-April. And because Iceland it is as it is, I basically skipped spring. So the trees were not like they were barely getting any leaves basically in Iceland. And when I arrived in Romania, the trees were already fully bloom in flower, like full on bloom. But the weird thing was that it was my first time living in another country for 9 months without visiting Romania. So it was at the time the longest I've been away from Romania. And it was weird to hear my native language all over the place because I don't understand Icelandic and I didn't understand it then either. I was able to kind of uh, I don't know, extract myself from the people around me most of the time because I wouldn't understand the language. And then it felt so overcrowded back in Romania. for everything around me, to understand everything around me. And at the same time, I was just trying to focus on nature part of the city that I was missing, basically.
And so, to conclude this week's episode, I would just like to say that if you ever dream of traveling, don't be afraid to do it. And if you have just stopped traveling, don't feel guilty if you are not happy with your decision. As I was saying in the beginning of the episode, it took me quite a bit to readjust to my new life.
Spoiler alert, I didn't readjust to it since, again, as I said, I just quit and I left Iceland and I was like, screw you guys, I'm going home. Yeah, it's still very very funny to me how calm and the tone of the voice, it's not too high, not too low, and how I was actually in a bit, I think I was better back then, maybe talking with my listeners, or at least I was trying more, maybe I was trying more. Yeah, I think I was trying more last time, back then, to talk with my listeners.
And I would like to also mention that there's never too late to take a new decision regarding your life. If you wanted to travel and then you realized that's not for you, then you can always stop. If you wanted to have a steady job and then you realize that's not for you, you can always try something new. So I would like to end my episode with just a question to ask yourself. Are you happy with your life right now? And if you're not, do you know what you can do to change it?
I mean, I did call the podcast Traveling Inside Out. So from the beginning, it was meant to be talking about the inner journey as well. And honestly, this question, maybe you should ask yourself at least once a month. Are you happy with where you are? And if you're not, do you know what you need to do in order to get back on track? Yeah, good on me. That's actually a legit valid question to ask yourself constantly throughout a year.
Full disclaimer, it's my first time making a podcast, so of course I'm still learning a few things. But tune in next week on Friday to hear the next subject. Bye bye!
Wait, what? What just happened? So I don't understand. I didn't have a jingle in the first episode. I guess I didn't. I remember that for a while I used some jingles that were offered for free from Anchor app. And then I had a friend who made me a jingle, an intro, and then finally I started playing in GarageBand and I made my own jingle. But wait, what just happened? That's so awkward. That's such an awkward ending. And yeah, this makes me think like I didn't have a jingle in the beginning either, right? I just straight up, just like, hi, I'm Alina, I have shit to say. Okay, so the subject is not bad. It's not bad at all. And what I'm saying, I stand by it. However, production value zero, minus one. Okay, not that I'm way, 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 way farther advanced. Currently, I kept slapping my hand on my lap for some reason. So if at some point you hear that throughout the podcast, this is what's happening. But yeah, so now that, again, production value, now that I'm like way, way, way farther advanced, but damn, it really felt forced. And it took me quite a few months until I started to feel way more uh, okay, basically. But something that I haven't said to anyone before, since we're talking about the first time, I remember, now I don't know if I do have those recordings, but I remember that in between takes, Well, I would stop and be like, okay, focus. I would say to myself, come on, you can do this. You wanted this. Nobody's forcing you. You don't have to do this. You just want to do this. I was so nervous. Like, really, it's just that I was very nervous. So, if I can take one thing from 4 years of podcasting, is that I'm still nervous when I have to talk in front of a camera, but I feel a bit more comfortable talking on a microphone with no cameras on me. So I think what I'm realizing, or what I've realized in these 4 years of podcasting, is that being an introvert and having a podcast is actually the way to go. Now, granted, there's a lot of podcasts that are also online with video, and I had videos for some of my interviews, but I still didn't feel comfortable to have these actual videos. Anyway, I just want now, let's take a short break and come back to my reaction to listening to the teaser. So, the funny bit is that I didn't want to add this to the podcast, but I was actually just checking my microphone. And I decided to check my microphone on the teaser. So then you're gonna hear me talking over the teaser, but enjoy my reaction.
Once a week, I will talk about my
Oh my
traveling
god!
adventures
Did I really
or
take a
about my
break?
daily life. Tune in next week
I didn't
when in
even
the first
edit this.
episode
This
I
is
will
the
talk about
worst
how it
teasers.
feels to finish 8 months trip around South America, how to adjust to a steady life, and about the cultural shock of being back home.
This is horrible. Why would anyone listen to this shit? This is so bad. Holy fuck. Are you kidding me? You know what? I need to turn up for myself. Bitch, this is not working out. What are you talking about? And now, at the end of the episode, I do have a message from one of my listeners, I guess. However, he has some complaints to make about a previous episode. It's about, well, you're gonna know in a moment what he's talking about. I'm gonna leave his message, and then I'm gonna give my comment on it because I couldn't. I have to comment on it.
Hi, I just want to comment on episode 105 about your worst travelling experiences. I have to say, I find it quite offensive and disappointing as an Irish person. First of all, that you said Ryanair is British, it's clearly an Irish company. Second of all, your big gripe with them seems to be that there was drunk people on the flight. I don't think there's much they can do about that. Why were you hoping that they would escalate the situation and there'd be a big incident in the air? I think if everybody got there safely, Ryanair have done their job. And then for you to say that you hope to go bankrupt is very, very offensive. That will, like, thousands of people will lose their jobs. It will be devastating to the Irish economy. And I just think it's terrible. I think you should withdraw your comments immediately. Thank you.
Before answering, I actually want to thank my listener for taking the time to tell me about his concerns. Um, I do have to say that this is an episode that happened, was published in November of 2020, 2nd of November of 2020. It's episode 106, 106. And I didn't remember exactly what I said, but before even remembering, I do want to say that it's never ever my intention to offend anyone. And I had to go back and listen to what I said because I really didn't remember what I said. So let us go back in time and listen to that part of the episode that my listener is referring to. Like, fair warning, today's podcast is about me ranting because I've been boiling up some frustrations in me. for the last few years, and I kept wanting to make an episode like this, and for some reason I kept postponing it. And I was like, you know what? I mean, it's in November of 2020. I think it's kind of makes sense to like rant about bad experiences during my travels. So the first one that I want to mention is, I think, yeah, let's go with Ryanair. For whoever doesn't know or doesn't live in Europe, Ryanair is a low cost airline company. I think it's based in UK, might be wrong. So while I really truly do not want to offend anyone, I am saying from the start that I'm not sure if it's from UK. So if you are feeling offended because I didn't do enough research and I'm even mentioning, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm mentioning from the beginning that I'm not sure if that's the country where the company is based. And regarding the all the other things that I've said, you just need to go and listen to the episode. But my complaint was that there were drunk passengers and nobody had a restful time in the plane. I think I'm going to assume that my listener is working for the airline company, because if not, I don't know why I would. I'm just imagining. But I do know there is a criminal offense to be drunk on an airplane, and at least in UK, and I was flying either from or to UK. So that's in their jurisdiction. Now, the thing is that the last thing that I said, that I wish for the company to go bankrupt, I mean, I wish a lot of companies to go bankrupt, and I don't feel sorry about it. So I'm not going to withdraw my comments, because I don't believe in withdrawing your comments. I'm going to leave them as they are. I'm addressing now this message here, and I truly hope that we can both disagree with each other and still be very pleasant. At least my listener probably is way more pleasant than I am, by the voice. um, so yes, this is my first message that I added to the podcast. Hopefully I'm gonna get to more. To be completely honest, I received a lot of messages in my first year, but I just didn't know how to add them to my episodes, so I didn't do that. And then people stopped doing, stopped sending me voice messages, and now the voice messages are back. And again, even if they are negative or they are presenting some concerns from my past episodes, anything goes. Unless you swear at me or like being very nasty, then that's not gonna be okay. But yeah, so this is my comment on the comment. I don't want it to be a back and forth, so I hope it's not going to be the case. But yeah, let me know if you have any impressions from my all 162 episodes so far. Come at me. What can I say? Maybe I shouldn't say quite that. Anyway, that being said, I still want to address two more things. Number one, I am saying at some point in the first episode of Traveling Inside Out, at the end, I'm saying, like, look for me or whatever for the next episode that was on a Friday. So yes, for like I think the first year or so, the episodes, or maybe it was not even, no, I think it was the first few months. The first few months, yes, the first few months of my of Traveling Inside Out, I would put the episodes out on a Friday, and then later on I moved it to a Monday. And I moved it to a Monday because there was a whole misunderstanding happening in one of my travels in New York. And so I decided that I'm going to move it to Monday, so then I can have the weekend to work on the podcast. But at the same time, the idea moved because I was like, wait, my podcast is about traveling. So if my listeners are usually traveling during the weekend, they're not gonna listen to my podcast. Like I would see it more like a radio show than what the podcast actually is, that you can listen to an episode whenever you want. Like, for example, my listener sent the voice message 1 month ago, and that episode was published November 2020. So yes, I was thinking, no, people who travel, they travel in the weekend, so I'm going to publish my podcast on Monday so they can listen to more travels while they are at work. Did it work? I don't know if the day of the week actually matters that much. I truly have no idea. That being said, I want to thank everyone who has been with me from the very beginning, while also being very grateful for people who discovered me throughout the years. Or if this is your first ever podcast that you are listening to, then welcome. You have a bit of catch up to do. But yes, so for those who want to get in touch with me, if you can just find my website, which is my name, Alina grad.com, and over there you can see the podcast episodes. You can see some of my traveling stories, because I have so many stories that I shared on this podcast. But if you read about them, you can also see pictures of what I'm talking about. And there is also a way to get in touch with me. So if you find the podcast tab, you can also find the tab of sharing your story, because I am curious to hear from my listeners about their comfort zone story. It's something that I've been focusing on since the beginning, and I am still curious to learn about people challenging their comfort zone, and not only physically but also talk to me about your inner battles. I want to hear about that as well. So the last season, or the last few months of the last season, I have shared an episode once in 2 weeks, but season 5 is back, so we are back with one episode per week every Monday. And let me tell you, next Monday it's gonna be so interesting, because I'm gonna tell you all about these past few weeks that were kind of a roller coaster kind of a situation, and also tell you where my next trip is going to be and when. Actually, it's happening next week. So stay tuned to find out more about it. This concludes today's episode. Thank you for listening, and if you want to get in touch with me, you can do so by emailing to alinaswonders@gmail.com. Until next time, follow your dreams and stay true to yourself.